Bleach, Thousand-Year Blood War, Part 2, Episode 3. In the Wandenrake city, which took over the Seirei's old spot, something big was happening. An army of fierce soldat was marching through the streets, attacking the brave shinigami of the 7th Division. Lieutenant Tetsuzeman showed off his skills, blocking their attacks with his Zanpakuto. In another part of the city, there was a wild scene. The 5th Division Lieutenant, Momo Hinamori, tried her best to defend herself, but a tough soldat was pushing her back. Meanwhile, the 4th Division Lieutenant, Iesene Kotetsu, played hide-and-seek with more soldat while caring for an injured shinigami. Over in a different area, some real trouble was brewing. The fiery Basbi launched his burner finger 2 at Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya of the 10th Division. Toshiro tried to protect himself with a massive ice wall from his shuriken, but the flames broke through and gave him a painful slash across the chest. There were so many other shinigami out there having a hard time too. Lieutenant Shuhei Hisagi was running away from 2 soldat, while Ikaku Madarame and Yumachika Ayasegawa from the 11th Division were rushing around, looking for who to help. Sangdu approached Basbi, stopping the fiery Quincy from continuing his attack. The stern Ritter Iron wanted to finish off Captain Hitsugaya for good. Basbi wasn't happy, replying that Sangdu would be punished for taking his kill. In response, Tsang reminds Basbi that his actions are based on Yhwach's orders, causing the frustrated Quincy to be angry even more. The Iron Stern Ritter dropped an injured Rengiku beside the wounded Hitsugaya, intending to kill both of them at the same time. Then, he activated Hitsugaya's Bankai, Daiguren Hyorenmaru, saying how beautiful it is while getting ready to deal the final blow. Meanwhile, at the Shinigami Research and Development Institute, things got super interesting. Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi was talking with Kisuke Urahara, who had some exciting news. He figured out a way to get back the stolen Bankai from the Quincy. And not only that, it will prevent the Quincy from stealing more Bankai. Of course, the surprised Mayuri found this news interesting, but he focused more on Urahara bugging his attire. But Urahara wasn't just all serious, and this part is funny because Mayuri would rather let the Seirei burn to the ground than accept help from Urahara. As he tried to disconnect the call, Urahara stepped in from the Senkaman, and speaking seriously this time, asked for Mayuri's help to use his hidden laboratory. Akon pleaded to Mayuri to offer his help, and the stubborn captain decided to go ahead. They all gathered in Urahara's lab, where they had to connect their systems to Wandenrake's technology. Urahara revealed some mysterious black pills called Shinyaku and told Mayuri how he got the idea when he was in Hueco Mundo. He had seen something strange during the battle with Stern Ritter J, when the Quincy absorbed a hollow monster but couldn't control his powers after, and that gave him an amazing idea. He realized that Arrancar's Resurrection and Soul Reaper's Bankai were kind of similar. So, if Quincy could steal Bankai, they should be able to take Resurrection too, right? But here's the kicker, no Quincy had ever stolen a Resurrection before, even though they were interested in Arrancar's. Mayuri was curious, and Urahara revealed that there must be a disadvantage to stealing Resurrection. Meanwhile, the tech guys were still working hard to connect everything while Urahara set up a communication spell called Bakuto No. 77, Tentikura. With that spell, he could talk to all the captains and lieutenants, explaining that the pills would react to anyone with a Bankai, so when touched by someone, it would disappear and do something cool to their soul. Everyone decided to give it a try, including the badly wounded Captain Hitsugaya. He touched the Shinyaku with his finger, and poof, it vanished into black smoke. Meanwhile, back in the lab, Mayuri had some deep thoughts. He didn't believe the Quincy hated hollows just because the legend said so. He thought their fear came from something deeper, something that threatened their lives. This means the Quincy had no defense against the hollows, which were like poison to them. If a Quincy got too close to a hollow, their spiritual powers would weaken, their souls would decay, and eventually, it could even lead to their death. And that's why the Quincy are hellbent on annihilating them. So, Urahara thought that if the Shinigami absorbed a little bit of hollow power, their Bankai abilities would become poison to the Quincy too, as shown when Sangdu's Bankai wings got seriously damaged. Sangdu, surprised, saw Hitsugaya, getting up with a new ice wing formed on his back. The Quincy was puzzled and asked what was happening. Hitsugaya wasn't sure either, but he thought that his Hyorenmaru wanted to join the action. Meanwhile, in another part of the battle, BG9 was trying to take down Suifong. But Omida came to the rescue. The cyborg Quincy wanted to extract data from Suifong, but Omida had a clever plan. He gave Suifong the pill that would bring her Bankai back. BG9 was determined and kept coming after them, but guess what? Suifong revealed her hollowified Bankai and shot it at BG9, causing a massive explosion. In the midst of all this action, Hitsugaya and Song were having their epic battle, with Song really kicking Hitsugaya around. They have an argument during their battle about Hyorinmaru being able to speak. Unknown to Song, Hitsugaya and his icy dragon were having a chat. Hyorinmaru was back and ready to help. Suddenly, Song found that one of his wings disappeared, and now Hitsugaya had his full ice wings. Song got all nervous and fired a super energy blast at Hitsugaya. But guess what? Hitsugaya didn't even flinch. He pointed his sword down and unleashed an icy wave that froze Song's energy blast. The poor guy screamed while getting engulfed in ice. After the icy showdown, Song ended up frozen in a massive ice cross. Hitsugaya was on top of a rooftop, looking all cool and explaining that the cross was a symbol of his power. Meanwhile, Bazby watched the whole thing from afar. He didn't seem too impressed with Song's loss and left the scene. Back on the rooftop, Hitsugaya thought everything was done and went towards Rengiku but collapsed due to his injuries. A mysterious shadow approached Hitsugaya, making things even more intriguing. On the other side, the other Sternritters lost their Bankai power. Now, we see another cool guy, Captain Shinji. He stood proudly among fallen subordinates, facing a bunch of soldats, but Shinji wasn't giving up, because he gets to use his full power without harming his allies. Then something crazy happened. He activated his Bankai, Sakashima Yakushima Hypofusiguri, and turned everyone's heads upside down, causing the bad guys to attack each other, confused by what they saw. Meanwhile, Ikaku and Yumachika were discussing their Bankai not getting stolen when they ran into Asagi, who complained about the change in territory. Suddenly, a masked Quincy, most of the Sternritters are masked anyway, appeared like a crashing meteor. But our trio was quick on their feet and managed to dodge the big guy just in time. The masked dude was all impressed by their dodging skills, but he called them undercards. Well, Ikaku and Yumachika didn't like that one bit. They threatened to take off his mask to reveal his face. I bet it will be a funny-looking face. Anyway, masked Quincy thought he was the greatest superstar ever and wanted to show off his powers. So, he challenged the 3 shinigamis to a crazy 3-on-1 deathmatch. First, he called some dude, James, to ring a huge gong, and Mask unleashed a massive shockwave. He called on the shinigami to attack him, and 2 of our heroes, Ikaku and Yumachika, swung their powerful swords at him. But guess what? Mask caught their swords like it was no big deal, shocking everyone. He tossed Yumachika into a building and spun Ikaku through the air like a wild ride. But just when he was about to throw Ikaku away, Asagi stepped in. He used his chain weapon to stop Mask, turning it into a chain deathmatch too. Meanwhile, there were more shenanigans going on with Bambietta and her friends. After losing her stolen Bankai, she tossed it aside, causing a massive explosion that took out some shinigamis hiding close by. Then she started throwing her usual tantrums when she suddenly realized her teammates had disappeared without a trace. Feeling confused and frustrated at being abandoned, she let out a massive explosion in anger. But here comes Kamamura, the armored captain. He wanted to avenge his captain's death and protect the shinigami from Bambietta. She was all talk, and when she tried to fight, our dear Shinji dropped in, giving Kamamura a pass to go ahead while he deals with the petty, tsundere Quincy. Shinji didn't waste any time and started messing with her mind using his tricky Shirkai powers. Bambietta couldn't understand anything, and Shinji played tricks on her, making her all confused and frustrated. He was too clever for her. And while she was throwing explosions around, it didn't even scratch him at all. Meanwhile, Mask was still trying to flex his muscles and act tough, but the shinigamis didn't back down. They tied him up with chains, and Ikaku stabbed him right in the face with his sword. But just when things seemed to be out of control, Yhwach, the ultimate bad guy, let out his trump card. Suddenly, Bambietta unleashed a crazy new power and she called it Quincy, Volstandig, and it was super dangerous. All the Stern Ritters started showing off their powers too, and Yhwach said the shinigami would regret getting their Bankai back. I guess he planned this all along to make them have hope of winning the battle, then dash that hope to pieces. Meanwhile, in another part of the story, our hero Ichigo was on a mysterious journey. He saw strange visions of a man surrounded by erasure pools and becoming the Soul King. It left him totally baffled and curious about what's going on. And that's just the beginning of the insane battle in the Soul Society. Who knows what will happen next? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and hit that subscribe bell so you don't miss out on the epicness of the next episodes. So, stay tuned for more epic battles and mind-bending twists.